when the threat of Saddam Hussein was being propagandized by the U.S. government and the media, the non-existent threat, as was soon to be revealed, Kim Jong-il was saying that he was going to, quote, destroy the world, and that was played down at the time by the media and by the U.S. government because they didn't want such obvious saber-rattling while they were trying to make the case that Iraq was the major threat, when Iraq was displaying fealty to everything that the U.S. and the United Nations was doing in terms of inspections. But now we're hearing the same rhetoric by Kim Jong-il out in North Korea. Not only by him, obviously by Japan as well, as you mentioned before. They're threatening to attack. But now it seems a lot more serious because of this second nuclear test. Now, what was interesting about the first nuclear test was that originally they claimed that North Korea didn't claim, but the Russians and others claimed that it was 50 megaton blast. It turned out to be 1. And the latest one has turned out to be less powerful as well. It's only turned out to be about a quarter of what it was, the power that it was originally.
Exactly.
claimed.
These are tiny A-bombs. If they're even that, they're probably just packing those tunnels full of a football field of TNT to register on the Richter scales because they're not picking up uranium. And we're talking to Paul Watson. Paul, the world is a dangerous place. Governments killed conservatively, just the big governments, 200+ million people last century. In fact, I show 200 million killed in Endgame and forgot to put what the Soviets did. I just messed up on the graph when I was telling the graphics guy, so it's 250 million at least. But let's just be conservative and say 200 million, because I did put the communist Chinese in there. I mean, government's the number one cause of death, unnatural death, and they're running around jockeying for global dominance and power. These people are bored. All the money, all the sex, they're sick of it. They want war. They want power. This is the big game. They call the most dangerous game hunting people, and you can still do that in Africa today. And it's been done, by many ancient cultures. The Romans did it. The Babylonians did it. The Aztecs did it. Native Americans did it. Some of the tribes would capture other tribes and hunt them. Some of the Gaelic groups would do that. The point is, humans do this. Well, the elite do it on a mass scale. And, Paul, looking at the RAND Corporation document, I know your article gets into that. Let's get into RAND Corporation wanting war from your angle, needing war, what they said, and it's all tied into this masterpiece you did, and Kurt Nemo's done a similar excellent piece that covers some of the other angles. State of war between two Koreas after armistice ended, prisonplanet.com. Paul Watson, Kurt Nemo, North Korea ends armistice, threatens to attack South Korea. That's Infowars.com. Different perspectives, different angles, because there's so many different stratas of this story. Watson, let's get into the RAND Corporation situation, historically what this means. It looks like battle lines are being drawn globally, and then let's explain who's given the nukes to Pakistan, who's given the nukes to North Korea, and who's even given the nukes, U.S., England, and Israel, and Halliburton to Iran. This is incredible. Every time it's the same people. And the question is, why do these countries take, it's like all the old Westerns where the evil guys just shot the little pan miners, been out there panning some gold, and there's a lot of true stories that these Louis L'Amour books and things are based on, and they come up and shoot the old daddy panning for gold, and his 12-year-old gets up and starts throwing punches at the bad guys sent by the railroad to steal the claim, and then they throw a gun down at the kid's feet and say, "Pick up the gun, kid, pick it up." And the kid picks up the gun and they shoot him. Anyways, I'm ranting, Watson. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, the RAND story was something we reported on in October last year, and it was a story that came out of the Chinese media, which is obviously state media, but there was no apparent motive to making the story up. And it said that the RAND Corporation had gone to the Pentagon and lobbied for a new war. They said they needed a new, bigger conflict. North Korea was mentioned, but it was ruled out because they said they needed something bigger. Now, obviously, North Korea on its own is a small country, but if you're talking about American troops on the border of China, then that's World War III, if it escalates. They also mentioned Japan. Whether in the context they could attack Japan or set Japan up is unclear, but we know that Japan yesterday, their former defense minister, who's still in the ruling government, said Japan should basically abolish its pacifist constitution so they could attack North Korea with cruise missiles. So Japan could be involved in that way. But yeah, North Korea was mentioned by Rand, but it was apparently ruled out at the time. My only hope is that this doesn't escalate, because the impression, from what I understand, is that China treats North Korea in the sense of keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. So with that, if that's the case, I would hope that China is prepared to sacrifice North Korea for the purposes of not escalating this into what could potentially be World War III. And from what I've read, Chinese military officials are talking to Russian and South Korean military officials on how they can defuse it. So hopefully that will be the case. But these things can escalate out of control. I mean, Pakistan and India were on the brink of nuclear war in 2002. People don't understand how close that came to being a reality. So these things can escalate quickly. The fact that I'm in China next week, obviously, because China borders North Korea, I hope that it doesn't escalate, but it'll certainly be an interesting 2 weeks in China if it does.
An interesting choice of vacation destinations. I think Switzerland was better last year when you went there, Paul. And closer to home, but yeah, I think you ought to cancel that trip if this continues to escalate. Maybe go take a few days off. Of course, you still write stories. You can't control yourself when you do take off 2 weeks a year for your holiday. I'm about to have to cancel my little 2-day fishing trip. My wife and kids are already on their way out to a cabin, and I'm calling them up saying, I don't think I'll be there. We'll see what happens. And the point is, the reason I might as well stay here is that even if I leave town and Burmis is in here sitting in, I'll just be down the street on a landline calling in at a hotel room to the show. So one way or the other, I'll be here the next 2 days. Watson, if you look at how World War I started with the assassination of the Crown Prince of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, if you look at how World War II started, if you look at how they prod and manipulate, they first build up enemies. The globalists built up Hitler and then went after him. They built up North Korea going after him, build up Pakistan, build up Iran. I mean, it's the same story over and over again. These bankers literally build the Soviets so they can be an enemy. The CIA funds Castro and then supposedly loses control of him. They do the same thing over and over and over again, and there's no doubt that they armed North Korea. There's no doubt they armed Pakistan. The Pakistani president goes on TV and says the West is controlling Taliban and al-Qaeda to commit assassinations and destabilize the government. Only about a third, most of the populous cities, so it's the most of the population, but it's about a third of the geography. I've seen the maps of what Pakistan even controls today, and they're losing control of their nation, just like Russia lost control of Afghanistan to CIA-controlled operatives. And, we're not defending Pakistan or defending Russia. Facts are facts. And then our media has such contempt for the American people that they tell us Taliban and al-Qaeda are with the Pakistani government. I mean, how asinine is that? And they clearly launched the attacks on India. And we had the former head of Pakistani intelligence, Hamid Gul, on breaking that down. I mean, it's the same MO over and over. Clearly looking at this picture, they're trying to make the entire world descend into regional conflicts, and then NATO and the United States will play the part of saviors. Your take on that, Watson, and then let's get into who gave them the nukes.
Well, that's right. It's called order out of chaos. And this is why the major international arms smugglers are always protected at every turn by the military-industrial complex and U.S. intelligence agencies, namely Dr. A.Q. Khan, the father of Pakistan's atom bomb, who admitted in 2004 that he was the leader of a worldwide arms smuggling network that passed on both information related to construction of nuclear weapons, and also he had several front companies that manufactured key parts for centrifuges, which operated out of Dubai. And of course, these front companies shipped these nuclear components to Iran, Libya, and North Korea.